Welcome to Thriving from Anxiety. My name is Sherianna Boyle, and I'm here with my co-host Cindy Horgan. And as always, our plan is to provide some really great discussion. We hope to provide you with some tools, tips and tools for ways to not only cope with stress, anxiety, and depression, but how do you thrive from them? Today we're talking about mindfulness, and we have a couple of guests that we have invited on our show. Their names are Fiona Jensen and Patty Weinstein. And Fiona is the founder and leader of an organization called Calmer Choice, where they bring mindfulness into the school setting with children of all ages. What a wonderful thing. So to begin this discussion, ladies, I thought I would defer to Cindy. And what I really want to talk about first is when you say the word mindfulness, it's a big word. I mean, it's a pretty general word. And all of us may have a different view of what that looks like for different reasons. And so I wanted to begin there because what you ladies might not know about Cindy that I know, and what I love about her, is she brings in a perspective that she has never had any formal training in mindfulness. Yet she's one of the most mindful women I've ever met. She really is, and that's what I love about her. So I always like to hear her perspective of mindfulness in her life, and then I want to hear what mindfulness means to you, Fiona and Patty, in regards to your organization, your mission. What is your intention? And maybe we can just begin there, okay?
Absolutely. When I start to think about mindfulness, I have this vision in my brain, and that I have all these shelves. And when I truly need to be in the moment, and that's what I consider mindfulness, is when I'm able to put things on the proper shelf and put them in the place that they belong, so that I can really focus on what's at hand. You know, we've been doing this work for a real long time, and very often when I get to a workshop or something to do, I may have had a lot of stuff going on in my world prior to getting there. And it has always been part of my process to have that time I put it together, and I put the things on the shelf, and I do that reflective, where am I in this moment, and what is my mission at this point? And the wonderful thing about me and mindfulness at this point is most of the people in my world respect that for me. And even when I'm leaving my office to go out and do a workshop or something, and I'll be leaving quite a bit earlier than it begins, and they'll say, you need to go to your place. And that's what mindfulness is for me. My place of where I'm centered is how I feel about it. And I think the other language I use to it is in the moment is what I am. Right.
And Cindy, I feel like you've been teaching mindfulness for a long time before it became a buzzword, way back in the late 90s when you and I started our work together. I feel like we were probably teaching mindfulness and not calling it that.
Right.
Before we get to Fiona, can you talk a little bit about, in your experience in all the different areas that you work, why you believe that this is a time where we really need to put a little emphasis on that in the family work that you do? Can you give us a little bit of that perspective?
Well, we live in a time where we're continuously looking at tomorrow rather than today. And I think when I'm talking about families and raising healthy families, so many of our families today are missing the moment. Right. And they are so forecasting in. For example, when we have a newborn, and that we're holding that newborn, so often we're only reflecting on, I can't wait till they can walk. Right. And we're missing the moment to wait to engage them. And so we spend, whenever I'm working with families, it's really on what's happening in this moment here. Because if we keep forecasting, we just kind of do this perpetual missing it is what happens. And I think in my earliest work, I was working with teen parents, and you know, they live in the moment, yet as parenting, it was complete chaos. So not only was it about helping them to be present in the moment, but to also be mindful of where their child was in the moment. So it was a dual relationship of mindfulness. And, you know, again, I can't tell you how many parents of 3-year-olds I'm in contact with that are worried about the 4-year college their child will go to. And I'm like, I really want to work on that they'll learn about the interactions with their peers, and I'm not really worried about their college quite yet.
Right.
And most importantly for me, it's about when you're present in that moment, that's where we grow.
Right.
And if we're not in the moment, we miss growth, and we turn it into this level of stress that becomes toxic.
Right.
And that is what undermines a lot of that parent-child relationship at every stage of development.
Right.
And so even for myself, in my moment of parenting, there have been times that my children have had to bring me back to be present in the moment, because I'm like, do you realize that what's going to happen and no one will hire you? And,
Right.
And they're like, let's work on today, Mom. And so I'm constantly in a state of being drawn to that place of being in the moment. And feeling it. That's the piece that gets missed. Being able to be present and feel the whole moment.
Right.
That's the part that kind of can just fill your soul when you really feel it.
Exactly. Yeah. So why don't we move to you, Fiona, and explain a little bit about, again, what does mindfulness mean to you? And I know that's a loaded question because you have such a journey, a really wonderful journey of how you came to be. And I know it's a long story of where you're at today, but for now, tell us about, in regards to your organization, how do you define mindfulness?
Yeah, no, that's great. And it was really great listening to you as well. And it's interesting to have that perspective. Like the functional perspective of it. So our definition is the classic paying attention on purpose, moment by moment, without judgment. At least that's what we tell the adults. And when Patty works with the kids, we pull in with curiosity and kindness, because the judgment piece, the kids didn't really get. And I think the thing that resonated as you were speaking, Cindy, was for me, all of us have this voice that goes in our head all the time. Judgment, I like this, I don't like that, I like this, I don't, she said this, all of this stuff. And the mindfulness to me is paying attention to, we teach the kids about paying attention to something like their breath or to sound. And oftentimes for me, it's paying attention to physical sensation, so that, because you can't really be thinking and worrying about something at the same time as you're counting your breath, and so there's this sense of space that gets created so that you can actually land where you are, which is, I think, a big thing. When we started there, and I love the thriving from anxiety, the whole idea is the anxiety is what brought me to the mindfulness, right? And then it was the mindfulness that made me realize that I wasn't my anxiety. Those were just the thoughts that I was having, that who I really was as the witness was actually not anxious.
Right.
I could watch that person be anxious, and we teach that, to the kids.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That's wonderful. How about you, Patty?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can add that much more, except with the little children is just, paying attention to what's happening right here, right now.
Right.
With that kindness and that curiosity, and weaving that into all of our lessons. We keep going back to that, and the senses that Fiona brought up is paying attention to the senses. What am I hearing right now?
Right.
What am I smelling? What's coming in? And sometimes all of that information that's coming into us can be a distraction. So then, bringing it back to the present moment of the breath,
right.
Especially in those situations when those challenging emotions come up for the children, and talking about that, that breath, it's always with us. And it's just taking that moment to notice that my body is breathing right here, right now, in this very moment. So, just keep coming back to what's happening right here, right now.
Right. That's wonderful. How is it going? I mean, how do you tell us some success stories? Tell us anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite remarkable. So we're about 5 years old now, and when we first started, a lot of, we hadn't worked with a lot of kids before. The people that we sent into the classroom were people who typically worked with adults, and it's very different working with a 5th grader than it is with somebody my age, in their 50s. And to try and figure, and now, Patty works with the littles, preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade. But what we find is that the kids are like sponges, like there's this sense of the world is moving really, really, really fast. And I mean, you would know that the anxiety, onset for anxiety now is around 4 to 6 years old,
Yes.
And so you're getting a lot of kids, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, that are having really, really significant issues with anxiety. And so when we teach them about how they can create that space between that sensation and who they are, there is this sense of I think there's a sense of relief. And we've had, Patty would be able to tell you more stories about the kids in the classroom, but we've had teachers and parents who've shared with us that children are actually using it in like real life situations. There was a superintendent in one of the school districts that was talking about a family whose house was on fire, and the parents, it was in the middle of the night, and they put the kids in the car across the street, so that they were safe and they were out of the way. And when the mom came to check on them, there was a 1st grader and a 3rd grader, and they were doing something called 5-finger breathing, And it wasn't because anybody had said, get in the car and do your 5-finger breathing, we'll be right back. It was because they had learned this in school, and they knew that Miss Patty had taught to them about when there's something going on and you need to kind of find your anchor, that this is something that, really can, that you can use. So, I don't know if you have other stories.
That's great. I love that.
I mean, a lot of the children use it to go to sleep at night. And just, noticing that they're having emotions, and feeling in their body. We talk about where do you feel it in your body when you're worried or you're scared or you're angry. And, it's just, to me, so amazing that they can say in my heart, in my stomach, in my hands, I shake. And so that awareness, again, of this is what's happening. And so now that you're aware, what can I do about it? And, going to sleep at night, one of the tips, we, in the very first lessons that we do, is belly breathing. So just, lying down, and we have a stuffy, you have a stuffy, and just lay it on your belly and notice the rise and fall of your belly. And as, the rise and fall, you can rock your stuffy to sleep. And it's just very comforting, and they come back, and when we like to, at the beginning of each class, ask them what mindfulness tools have you used, and we hear a lot of that. It helped me to go to sleep at night. After we had a gratitude lesson, a 3rd grader says, I had a hard time sleeping last night, so I started to think about what I was grateful for, and I fell asleep. And it's just,
that is really
heartwarming
that
and touching.
Is what must keep you going.
Yes.
Right, Fiona?
And I say to Patty, because I'm the executive director of this, so I don't get to be in the class, which is why I brought her with me. But I say to the instructors, we have 13 instructors out there, can you just tell me the stories? I just need to know the stories, because I'm going to, exactly, because I got to go talk to a funder, so I just need to know, why am I doing this again?
Exactly.
It's remarkable, and then we've had just one more, and then we had we worked with a bunch of high schoolers for a while, and stories about this one kid who, he said, instead of punching I got into a fight, and instead of punching the wall, I went in my room and I practiced my mindful breathing. And I thought, really? But really they're using it, before football games, and because they're...
And it's so exciting that it's finally here, because for so long we prepare our kids academically, but we really, haven't been preparing them emotionally, and this is, to me, is absolutely essential. It shouldn't even be a question.
Right. But the timing is just, it shouldn't be a question.
Right.
And the timing is so beautiful because it has been a shift in the way that we look at what our education should look like for our children. And especially there's been some wonderful books written in the last few years, and it's all how your child to succeed and everything. And everything comes down to social and emotional wellness.
right.
And it's parallel. It's social and emotional wellness cannot exist without being able to truly feel what those feelings feel like.
Right.
And, you know, from the very beginning of our work, not only does it make for healthier human beings, but it keeps them safe.
Right.
When a child makes sense of what fear feels like in their body,
Right.
that's their meter that says stay away.
Right.
You know, and quite, you know, Sheri's been talking about breathing for a very long time, and basically I should be dead, you know, I'm a very but in those moments when I've been in those sort of, you know, and I meet people from all walks of life, and I've been in some pretty intense moments. And when I'm digging real deep into my tool bag of how am I going to move us forward in this, every time it's been, let's breathe first together. And it's verbalizing that. And that's the only way that I'm ever de-escalating a situation to the place that now we can problem solve.
And what I'm keep coming back to as well, Cindy, is the fact that you're teaching them not to be afraid of their own emotions. And really, we're coming from a really big shift of prevention. Remember, everything was about prevention, prevent this, prevent that. I know you used to go crazy with some of the things that were out there. And it's really, we kind of misled some people that we had to prevent our emotions from ever happening.
Right.
We had to stop them, make them go away, fix them, control them, and it was confusing. And so what you're doing is teaching people just, it's okay to feel your feelings.
Right.
There's nothing to be afraid of. We know the evidence shows that it takes 30 to 90 seconds to actually feel a feeling through and process it through the body. We know now in the field of psychology that talking about it is only a fraction of how you really digest and move through these emotions, that you absolutely have to integrate the body. There's no other way. It's a mind-body connection to be able to process an emotion. We know now that anger and our feelings don't just exist up here. I can have anger in my hip.
I think I do. I have a really important question coming up here.
Yes.
But I feel like you had something to say, Fiona, so I want to...
Well, what I wanted to say when you said that is, interestingly, what happens in the schools, because the teachers participate with the kids and the guidance counselor participate, that often in the schools where we've been for a while, a child will go down to the guidance counselor, and before they begin talking about anything, they do a moment of mindfulness, right? So you've got this child who's escalated, and then, you know, they ring the chime, and they do a minute of mindful breathing, and then they talk about what was going on, you know? So it's almost like, it's amazing how, you know, what we're finding is because it's a universal prevention, so we work with every single kid. We don't just work with the children who are pulled out or difficult, whatever. So that the whole culture shifts. So all the teachers are getting it and the kids are getting it. And then we've done it numerous years in some schools. So there's a whole shift in the whole culture of the school. So you've got kids who are sort of coaching each other. And then the last thing is that whole idea that we do this great lesson on perspective, that we're all having these feelings, you know, like it's not just me that's having all these thoughts in my head. Everybody has it. It normalizes what it is to be human, you know, which is like, what a relief, you know.
That there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. And so they actually get to have an open discussion?
Absolutely.
So they get to participate. You ask questions. So it's more than teaching the tools.
Well, and I'm sharing my experiences as a human being, having human emotions, my perspective, my anger, my fear, what comes up for me when I sit down to play the piano, when there's people I know listening, how I freeze. my amygdala goes off, and I can't function.
Yeah.
So just sharing that it's like they then connect.
They can
There's
relate.
a connection. They can relate.
And there's the integration into everyday life.
Yeah.
Right.
They understand how to make the transition.
Yes.
And the word integration and what you said about the culture, to me though, way back, and I'm seeing a shift here too, you know, the schools, the responsibility for a teacher is just overwhelming. It really is. And I'm so glad that the teachers are benefiting from this, because I know that any time that it came time you wanted to introduce something new, there was a great deal of pushback that said, not another thing. We don't have time for curriculum. We need curriculum. And so I know that I'm so excited to hear about a culture within a building changing, because that tells me it's intentional and it's a natural part of every day. So we just don't wait for crisis mode to teach about mindfulness, that it's a natural way to do it.
Well, and what's interesting is what we found, and this is just informed by what we've actually seen, so, you know, was that the first year we actually do still get some pushback from teachers. They're like, oh, one more thing. But by the second year, first of all, by the third class, they're like, oh my God, I so get this, and they're experiencing for themselves, and they're noticing how, you know, Miss Patty, the class just settles. But by the second year, because we go back again, there's oh yeah, thank God you're back. I'm not sure I want to teach it, but really glad you're back. And then what we found is over that time, then teachers start showing up as like, we've been able to then do teacher programs where we provide a program for the teachers for themselves, not so they can teach it, but because so that they can, you know, like you put the mask, oxygen mask on yourself first. And then what happens is from that we get a few people in the school who say, you know, pick me, you know, can I be trained? And so that's actually what's happening. So that the idea is for us to get out of the school, for the school to be able to be a mindful school. But it's like a 5-year process that we're seeing on the court actually happening in certain schools.
Isn't that
That's
incredible?
the key, that prevention isn't about instant gratification. It's about a 5-year process
It is.
of really retraining how we do this.
So because we're beginning to see that, we're getting some traction as far as districts who are really, they're getting it. They see it, they can see an end. Because otherwise it's just what we're just going to have you come forever. Like, you know, no, we can't do that. But they can actually begin to see
and it becomes sustainable, you know. It's building it into the culture.
So it's an extremely wise investment, because it has life after you leave. And so everything that we know when you're asking somebody to invest into something, you know, what is the sustainability to it? And
now we didn't know that 2 years ago, though. That's the exciting thing. We just are like, it's like, wow, we thought maybe this might be what would happen, but now we're actually seeing it happen.
And and you've done research.
And we've done research, yes. So we have.
Can you talk about the research?
So interestingly, we begrudgingly did the research because we were getting these great stories, and then we were getting school districts saying, but we need data. And I'm like, oh, data, we're too busy getting the stories. We have to actually get data now? What are data? Where do you get data from? So we started with Tufts University, where I actually graduated, and I had a friend there, and we got IRB approval to do an outcomes process. So just for internal uses. For us, it wasn't research. We didn't have the money to do that, but we studied 341 kids, grades 3 through 6, and we found remarkable, you know, we used the United Way model to create the survey and all that kind of stuff, and we found remarkable results in that the kids, you know, there were 10% of all kids who identified as having issues in all areas. So we aligned it with the curricular frameworks for health, so that we were speaking the language that the schools were speaking. And we looked at everything from, you know, test anxiety to sleep to getting along with others to, you know, thinking before I speak, you know, all this kind of stuff. And what we found, which was really remarkable, is the kids who tested, who self-reported having the most amount of trouble in all those areas, were the ones that made the biggest gains by the end of our program. And it was really remarkable. And we found that 86% of all kids, even the ones who weren't self-reporting, having all these issues, were using it when we were done.
Yeah.
So that we did, and then what we wanted to look at, and we actually had Yale, we're working with Yale University now because they came to us saying, okay, well, what would it look like if you increase the dosage of mindfulness? Like that's just an 8-week program. What would it look like if we increase the dosage so that it happened throughout the school year? And what if we actually had a school that not only had it throughout the school year integrated, but actually practiced mindful moments 3 times a day? So we actually have this, we're just like 3/4 of the way through the first of probably 3 or 4 year study.
This is fabulous, and what I'm sensitive to is I want everyone to see just one example of it because we're nearing the end of our time.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, Patty, that you can share one of the techniques that you use with the children.
Sure. So, well, I think first is what it looks like when I go into the class and just ask them all to get into their mindful bodies, sitting up like kings and queens.
A king and a queen.
Yeah,
I like that.
A king and a queen, just sitting up nice and tall. Imagine a balloon gently attached to the top of your head, just gently pulling your head and neck out of your shoulder area. Gently closing your eyes if that's comfortable for you. Otherwise, just glancing down with a soft gaze and just listening to the sound of the bell. The full, complete sound of the bell. All the way to the end. And when you don't hear it any longer, just take a moment to be aware of what sounds are present to your ears right here, right now. Just noticing sounds. And as the sounds continue to be here, gently shifting your focus and attention to your breath. Maybe bringing your hand to your chest or your belly, to the place that you notice your body's breathing, the rise and the fall of your chest or your belly. Finding that quiet, still place that lives inside each one of us. And then just waiting for the sound of the bell one more time. And when you don't hear it any longer, bringing your attention back to the room.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And you don't need a chime, and we talk about that. You don't need a
this is
chime,
something for families and school systems. I'm thinking about the people that don't have a Fiona in their community.
Right.
Doing this hard work. I hope that they can maybe take this suggestion and just a simple little chime. And
So-
really, I felt that.
I really did, and
Right.
being sensitive to, especially that as it went on at the end there and following it.
Yes.
And I think that this has been an amazing conversation here today, and an opportunity to
think we should
like-minded
have 'em
people.
back, Sid.
Yeah, like-minded spirits.
We want more.
But Sheri and I have really begun this work, really recognizing how anxiety can really derail an individual, and I think when we have a community that's responding this way, because we have a community that is in a scary place right now, and I think that this is one of the models, hopefully, that will make a difference. And I want to say thank you for sharing this time with us.
Thank you.
And I'm so
luck.
excited. I can't wait to hear more on what happens with that. And if you need a practice subject, I'm your girl.
Great.
And,
great.
But thank you so much, and I look forward to journeying with you on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.